Good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of October 28th, 2021 is called to order. Due to the COVID-19 novel coronavirus and the health recommendations from the Los Angeles County Health Department, this Design Review Board meeting is being conducted virtually with no members of the public present. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes. The Design Review Board meeting is being broadcast live on GTV6, is viewable on Spectrum Cable TV Channel 6 and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage, which is glendaleca.gov/live, on YouTube under My Glendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city's website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. Again, that number is 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. Records of decisions for all projects will be posted online on the Planning Division's website. Please note that any appeal of a case heard today must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The appeal application is also available online. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Minas?
Yes.
Board Member Smith?
Present.
Board Member Simonian?
Present.
Board Member Chagayan is absent this evening, and Chair Welch?
Present.
Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for the October 28th, 2021 regular meeting of the Glendale Design Review Board was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall on October 25th, 2021, and on the city's website a week ago on October 21st, 2021. Next up on the agenda is approval of Design Review Board minutes from October 14th, 2021. Are there any comments regarding these minutes? And for these, Board Member Simonian, Smith, Chagayan, and Chair Welch were present, and Board Member Minas was absent. So,
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I so move.
I have a motion by Board Member Smith. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Simonian. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Smith?
Aye.
Board Member Simonian?
Yes.
And Chair Welch?
Yes.
The minutes are approved, 3-0. Next up on the agenda is Community Development Department updates, which we have none. Board member, commission member comments. Are there any?
Yes, I would like to say a few words before we commence tonight. This is by way of some general comments regarding our behavior on the board. And we, each of us on this board, are volunteers and are donating our time and expertise as a service to the city. But as board members, we are also officials with authority and discretion. Applicants come before us at these hearings to present their designs, some of which they've spent years working on in consultation with the city. Members of the public also come before us to express their views. And our responsibility is to fairly and judiciously review the designs presented, weigh all of the factors, and to make decisions. We are empowered to apply the design guidelines and city ordinances pertaining to development applications. Each of us can and often do reach somewhat different opinions as to how to apply the design guidelines. This does not mean some of us are wrong and some of us are right. Reasonable people can disagree. What I appreciate most about the workings of this board is that we can often work together collaboratively to help guide applicants toward designs that better adhere to the guidelines and, I hope, lead to better designs as a result. This board, as public officials, must perform our function during these meetings with professionalism and decorum. We must treat each other, the applicants, members of the public, and city staff with the respect that they each deserve. As I said before, we can disagree with each other and we can ask each other questions to understand. In the end, though, each of us makes our own decisions and we all accept that. But it is inappropriate to be rude or to behave in a manner unbecoming of the professionals that I know each of us to be. So let us please strive for that high level of respect and professionalism in all of these meetings. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Chair Welch. Next on the agenda, old business, which we have none, and there are two cases under new business. So at this point, I would either like to turn the meeting back over to Chair Welch or to Ms. Minji Ham to present the first case on tonight's agenda, which is for 519 Solway Street.
Yes, 519 Solway Street. That shouldn't be the first case tonight, is it?
It is
Brookham.
Brookham, right? Brookhaven, or
I'm looking at
the minutes. I think.
Yeah, the minutes. Yes. So the first case tonight, I'm sorry, is 3526 Brookhill Street. Thank you.
Brookhill. Thank you. Okay. Yes. Let's proceed with the case.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're up. My name's Wes, and this is my wife. Oh, go ahead.
I apologize.
Yeah, no, we
Yes.
we start with the case planner. So
Correct.
so
The case planner will make the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening and thank you. This is case number PDR 2110512 for the project site located at 3526 Brookhill Street. The project site is a 7,665 square foot interior lot on the southern side of Brookhill Street, located in the R11 low density residential zone. Originally developed in 1955, the lot is rectangular in shape and slopes down from the street, similarly to adjacent properties. The existing single family residence is centrally sited on the downsloping lot and features a rectangular building footprint and a swimming pool at the rear. The applicant is proposing to construct a 435 square foot deck that you'll see in hatched gray area, deck beyond the existing swimming pool at the rear of the existing house. The overall height of the deck would be 11 feet 9 inches. The existing single family house will remain unchanged and remain as is. This application only involves a new deck at the rear. To provide a little more context on the property, on May 1st, 2019, a 328 square foot addition to the rear was approved and exempted from design review. This building permit was issued on April 29th, 2021, and this permit has not been finalized yet and is still under construction. And there was also one coast slope oak tree at the rear of the property. Per the arborist letter dated December 26, 2020, this coast slope oak did not have the dimensions required to be protected, and this tree has since been removed per permission from the city's arborist. And these are some pictures of the property. The first picture you see on the left upper hand corner is the view from the street, and the other three pictures of the rear area where the existing site is currently. And these are some close-ups of the area where the deck would be located. And this is a close-up of the rear yard. The top portion is the existing rear yard plan, while the bottom is the proposed rear yard plan. As you see in this partial plan, along with the whole site plan we just saw, there are no alterations being proposed to the existing building footprint or site planning aside from the deck. The proposed location of the new deck is consistent with surrounding sites, which contain decks at the rear, and the new deck will extend from the swimming pool and comply with the required interior setbacks. The existing landscaping, including the row of trees at the rear property line, will be maintained on site and no other changes are being proposed. However, staff recommends a condition of approval that new drought-tolerant landscaping with proper irrigation be provided at the base of the deck to provide screening. And these are the proposed elevations. The size and general appearance of the new deck are in keeping with the other decks on downsloping lots in the area. The proposed deck will not significantly affect the existing dwelling's mass and scale, as this is all at the rear, and the height will not go over the existing height of the house. The overall height of the new deck, as mentioned, will be 11 feet 9 inches, where a maximum height is allowed to be 15 feet per code. As mentioned during the previous slide, staff is recommending a condition of approval that a new landscaping is provided at the base of the new deck to help screen the structure. And this is the partial east elevation. From the elevation, you'll notice that the house is not as in great detail as the proposed deck, and that is because it's not in scope. You'll see that the picture on your right-hand corner is where the deck would extend out to. And this is the west elevation, along with a picture on your left-hand corner where the deck would be. Right now, it's currently only the area where it's connected to the swimming pool. And you'll see from here that the existing rear yard configuration with the swimming pool area already overlooks the properties below, and the new deck will inevitably continue to overlook the same properties from a somewhat closer distance. If the nearby property owners are concerned about a possible reduction in privacy, the board may choose to consider a condition of approval that the screening be provided by the existing row of trees along the rear property line to be extended with new landscaping to provide additional screening. And to give you an idea of how the deck would look as proposed, here are two versions of the same elevation we just saw. So the first one, just the south elevation, it does not have our existing row of trees, just to show what the deck would look like. And the bottom, the south elevation with existing trees, which are to remain, that's how the deck would look. The new deck will feature custom guardrails with brown deck board top rail and black horizontal aluminum siding panels, mahogany colored composite wood deck enclosure, and mahogany colored composite wood decking material, which are appropriate for this type of structure. Because the proposed deck rails will have to be custom made, there is no existing brochure picture for that. So what is shown right now and submitted by the applicant is the basic default guardrail kit picture with the brown top rail that the applicant's chosen company sells, which can be customized to the applicant's liking. And the same applies for the proposed gate. The actual look of the products are better shown on the elevations that you'll see here with the horizontal siding in black and the top rails are brown. There were no comments received during the public comment period, and staff is recommending approval of this project with the one condition below as shown. Provide new drought-tolerant landscaping with proper irrigation at the base of the deck to soften the massing when viewed from below. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Simoni, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do have some questions for staff. As a clarification on the guardrails, when I'm looking at sheet A2, the materials as depicted on the bottom right corner illustrates an example of the material for the guardrail itself. And if I could get a little more clarity, it seems as though the top of the guardrail is going to be this walnut deck board, which is the top rail, correct? And then the bottom, it says some sort of a black aluminum horizontal siding.
That's correct.
Are we talking about like a horizontal siding element, like a 6-inch wide siding or something like that? Is it solid? I see. So it's what you're depicting then is the siding, like is 6 or 8 inches tall, but then there's a gap between them. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
I see. And as far as the lower screening material is concerned, again, this material that's being proposed is this TimberTech Vintage Collection.
Correct.
but this is gonna be more of a vertical kind of a layout without the gaps, is that right?
Correct. The bottom portion is the vertical. Yes.
I do have some more questions, but it might make sense to ask the applicant because they might have spoken to their general contractor or their designer about the specifics, but thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Are there any other questions from board members? Okay, let's open the public hearing and hear from the applicant, please.
Absolutely. Good evening to everybody. My name is Wes, and this is my wonderful, amazing wife, Nairi. And we're the owners of 3526 Brookhill Street. And we just want to, first of all, thank you for having us. And thank you for Minji for all the hard work she's put in and just being so approachable and nice. And we really appreciate that. We're very excited about the potential of adding this deck to our property and just feel it would really make the best use of space. We have 2 boys, and they'd be able to enjoy it and play on it a lot more. It'll be nice when the summer months are hot, and it's good exercise for them too. Also, the reason why we've gone this route is due to the slope of our hill, as Minji mentioned before. And really, if we did go with the 8-foot route, it would be almost 4 feet lower and not be level with our pool. So it would be a step down to the deck area. And just between our kids and the potential of them falling, and also my mother-in-law, her wonderful mother also, she has difficulty with steps and stairs, and we'd rather just have everything in the back one level. It'll be a lot safer for her. And we feel like it'll be a little bit more private for not only us, but also the neighbors behind our property. Currently, there's a chain link fence at the end of where the pool is. And we think that the new addition, along with the design, will really blend nicely and also help with the privacy piece along with that. And it'll blend nicely with the surrounding nature-esque environment that we have. We do want to really keep those trees there. The trees they just look great, and they do provide for that privacy too for our neighbors behind us. So we hope that this will be approved, and thank you again for your time. And of course, any questions, either my wife, who's the design guru, she's got a sense of how things will look the nicest, or myself, we can answer.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Board Member Simoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The questions I had was, again, more specifically about these horizontal aluminum siding that you're proposing. Have you physically researched the material, and do you know how thick it's going to be? And the reason why I'm asking is not so much for the look, in that when these aluminum pieces start spanning between your vertical pieces, they get very flimsy unless they have some depth to them. So as just some advice, if you're trying to put something that's more horizontal based, you might want something, especially if it's aluminum, to have some thickness to it. And in which case it might get pretty expensive for your cost prohibitive. So that's something to be mindful of. Have you looked into that? Have you researched and have I kind of identified those pieces and have a better sense as to their construction?
I mean, we've talked to our contractor. Obviously, for us having 2 boys, that's priority, is that we want it to be safe and something that can handle, like, if our kids ran into it. So, yeah, I mean, they said that they would custom build it to make it safe, either aluminum or if we needed raw iron, I'm not sure, so something black, thick, with that width to make sure that it's sturdy.
And that's something to be mindful of. The other matter is the decking material that you're actually proposing as your screening, which is the TimberTech Vintage Collection. It's probably more, it's not going to weather as well as some sort of a cementitious siding material will. So your basically putting this material on the dirt, right? You're going to get water on it. You're going to get sprinklers on it. It's just going to get wet. And this material is more intended for decking purposes or even some sort of a soffit, but it doesn't really wear as well as a cementitious siding product. So if you had, let's say, a James Hardie product, you could get a similar look, but it will outlast this material, and it'll be a lot less maintenance on the long run, and you could get a factory colored. So those are things.
What is it called? Sorry, what is
James Hardie.
Oh, James Hardie.
James Hardie, yes. It would be a cementitious siding material, factory painted. The paint will last you 25 years, and it's bulletproof compared to this stuff. This stuff, doesn't last you as much when it's in contact with the elements. So just some thoughts for you.
So you're talking about just the fascia, the skirting section.
Correct, the screening material.
Vertical. Yeah, they have a fascia that's exactly the mahogany, but yeah, we'll be glad to look into it if it will, we appreciate that recommendation. Yeah, we can totally look into that. Well, the reason why we like this AZEC line is because compared to Trex and some of the other composite decking, it doesn't get as hot, when you're walking on it. And it seemed to have, the claiming of it being easier to maintain over time, but yeah.
And you could have two different materials. You could have that on your decking surface where you're walking on it, but then with the screening material that's at the bottom where you're not walking on it, it could be something more resilient.
Okay.
It'll be good.
The other question I had is the planters that you've incorporated, it's not spanning the entire length of the deck, and you have what you have there are existing lugostrium at the bottom, but that stops at some point where your deck juts out, and then you've stopped the planter on top. Is there a specific reason why you're not extending the planter all the way down for privacy reasons, for both for yourself and the neighbors, and especially in the area that doesn't have the existing vegetation at the bottom of the hillside?
Do you mean specifically the trees that are there on the very bottom?
Correct. So the trees stop, and the staff did mention that if it's up to the board for us to kind of stipulate if we want them to continue. That's one item. The second item is on top. It seems as though you're integrating planters on your deck at the edge. Is that right? And
it's something we're like considering. I think we just put it up there in the drawing as an option, but it's something we can possibly do to, if it's to create more privacy. It's just, sometimes you don't know until you look at it if it's going to be better that way or if it's not going to be better that way. So we didn't put it all the way through because we're not sure if that's going to be better or not. The neighbors below us have quite an angled view from their backyard, and we have a good relationship with them. We've gone back there, we've talked about it. So their view would literally be the top 1.5 to 2 feet maybe of our deck. So they would literally just see the top half of just the rail. So I don't, we didn't know if it would be better for them to have planters all the way, because then at that angle, you stop seeing part of the sky. It's hard to, say, but so, it's an option for us to put planters up there, but it's not something we put all the way through because we didn't know if that's going to be beneficial or not. We were just going to kind of play it by ear to see. And again, we have total respect for our neighbors behind us, and we want to, we want to make sure to make it private for them and us, but we want it to be something that would actually be good for both parties. And as far as the trees go, that's just where these trees have stopped.
I was going to say that too. When we purchased the house, there were no trees continuing that line there. We did talk about the possibility of adding new trees, and we discussed that with our neighbor too. His concern is that he has a vinyl fence that's there, and he feels like the more trees that are there, the more chances the roots could also push against that vinyl fence. So we weren't going to jump on that specifically, if that's not something that would, be beneficial to them in the long run. But, we are open to ideas. We just want to make sure it's something that, is number one, is approvable, and also something that will be favorable to our neighbors.
Thank you so much for sharing all that. I could tell you have a pretty good relationship with your neighbor, and I'm not sure if they're on the line yet or if they're going to be calling in. However, all these things are good to think about up front because you are getting design review board approval. And if you put a planner there, your case planner is going to expect a planner there after construction, right? So you just have to be mindful of that. In regards to, let's say Lugostrium does it's a great privacy element, and it doesn't grow typically taller than 12, 14 feet. So it's a great hedge to have in these kind of situations because of your elevation difference. So if everybody does have an issue with seeing one another, if you plan it the way you have it right now, which is about 3 feet from the fence, those roots won't affect the fence because it's a few feet away. And they're a lot less maintenance compared to like a ficus or something like that. Ficus will go 30 feet tall if you let
I think
it go.
these are ficus trees that we have right now in that line at the bottom.
They don't look like ficus. They could be unless you trim them all the time. Well, I'm looking at a photo. It's hard
Okay.
to say. But
we're not
arborists,
professionals,
so
so
we,
you could be very well correct.
when one person told us it was a ficus tree, we said okay.
so thank you for your input. Thank you.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions? The applicant, Board Member Smith.
We can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Okay, sorry, I
There
always
we go.
get it backwards. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I have a quick question. So your house seems to be kind of traditional in style. What you proposed is lovely. It looks sort of like a dwell type fence. Did you give any consideration to doing like a factory painted, like one of the colors in the house, or something that wouldn't be the false wood for the vertical elements?
What do you mean? Sorry, can you clarify? You mean like you're talking about the skirting, right? The bottom
Right.
vertical part? You're saying to match it with the house color?
Not, thank you for your clarification to mine. No, I mean, some material in the house. I didn't see any natural wood in the exterior of the house, where there would be something, and this is not a big difficult consideration for me. I'm not judging you that if you decided not to, but I was thinking of the design that it is, but using a material that could be a factory painted color where you see it above the ground, all the vertical elements. So it would be the skirting and the fencing, so that it wouldn't be sort of introducing a new element into the design vocabulary. It's just a thought. I was wondering if you gave it any thought, and by the looks of your faces, I think maybe you didn't.
We have to be honest, we didn't. We
Okay.
just figured this kind of blends in the nature-esque kind of like foresty kind of area we live, and it just kind of adds a nature type element, with the trees. So we just thought, and also we felt like it blended better with all the trees that are behind, in the rest of the neighborhood.
Great.
So that's just kind of what we were going for.
Thank you so much for your response. It makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, are there any callers on the matter? There are no callers?
There are no callers.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So with that, I think we can turn to board member deliberations here. Board member Simone, would you like to lead off?
Sure. It's a very modest deck addition. No site planning issues from my point of view. the way it's been integrated into the pool at the same level of the backyard seems to make sense. Um, they've taken the time to illustrate and to depict the stair locations, and that's wonderful. Um, I think looking at the site photos, specifically the photos from the rear, which you could kind of tell the existing planting that's on the bottom of the hillside, which is I do believe it's a Bugastrium from the flowers that it has. I think if that kind of extends, it might be a good thing for both the applicant and the home below, because when you're standing at next to the pool, you would see a nice greenery versus the rooftop of the home below. So I think that's a good design concept to integrate, and that probably will work a lot better than the planter up top. I think the planter on top is going to take up your deck space. You're spending all this money on a deck, but then you're putting a planter and you're eating up 2 feet of it, and the water is going to leak through it, and you got to then worry about the finishing of the wood. It's not ideal, and any kind of landscaping you'd want to put on the dirt below you, and extending that existing material, and we could just say that I would like to see that existing shrubbery continue. Whatever that is. I'm pretty sure it's the costume.
I appreciate your feedback. If I could mention too, Mr. Simonian, just because what happens to the
you gotta let us.
Oh, sorry.
we're not in the hearing any longer, so we're in deliberation.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
The chair could decide to open it again and allow you
okay
to speak. And as far as the material is concerned on top, I've already made my point. I think the applicants could take that into consideration. In regards to the screening material, I do agree with Board Member Smith. I think if we go with an earth toned cementitious siding, as I mentioned as well, I think it'll blend in a lot better and it'll be a lot more resilient over time. So with those thoughts, I think it's a reasonable design, and hopefully it helps out the applicant for them to better use their backyard. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good, thank you. Board Member Smith, would you like to go next?
Sure. I have very little to add. It's a simple project. There are some recommendations in the guidelines that I don't even think are necessary to bring up. So I'm perfectly willing to pass this on and let the next person speak.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Minas?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the beautiful report by the staff. Basically, I agree that one of the best ways to reclaim property or usable property would be construction of a deck. And I agree with Board Member Simonian about the use of better quality material that would be longer lasting. And of course, eliminate putting any kind of planters on the deck that would, in a long-term basis, deter the wood members. I like the deck for more like stability and long-term betterment of their own property and the neighbor's property. Putting a deck that would be supported through vertical shafts will improve the lateral support of the building pad that the property owners are living in. And also putting a deck on the slope that is bare will reduce the chances of direct rainfall on the soil that will cause erosion, and the lower property owner may be adversely affected. So it serves both purpose for this property and the property below. It will be favorable construction, will enhance the slope stability over which it's being constructed. It will improve the lateral support of the building pad and then reduce the amount of the erosion going downhill to the neighbor's house. And the small scale construction of this kind, I have no other comments to make.
Very good, thank you. I also don't have very much to add. I appreciate the fact that it's a fairly modest project. It is not overscaled. I think my fellow board members' comments are good feedback and you know, considerations for the applicant. But I'm happy with the condition that the staff has provided for the project. And as I said, I support the project. So with that, would one of the board members care to make a motion to Board Member Smith? Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the project with the staff conditions.
Is there a second?
Yeah, just the board added. I think the board revised the staff condition, or did I? There wasn't a concurrence on the earth tone cementitious material and running the staff condition wasn't to run the trees across. That was kind of just a recommendation in the body of the report, which we could take and turn into a condition in lieu of condition 1 in the staff report.
Board Member Simonian, do you have thoughts on that, or is it more of consideration on your part?
Well, I do believe the cementitious siding is going to serve them, the homeowners, that much more, and it's going to be a lot less maintenance on the long run. So I think it's a wise move. Is it that important to me? No, because I don't really see it. I do think if I was a landowner below it, I'd want to see an earth tone matter. So, but that person hasn't called in, and so personally, I do think that it would be a good condition to state. But I think it's modest addition, and it's not the end of the world from my point of view. But I do think those are sound decisions to make, and that's what I would do if I was the owner.
So should we make those keep the staff condition to landscape the entire base of the new deck? And then
I think so. I think it will help both parties if that existing ligustrum is carried out, and to use the screening material to be cementitious siding, earth toned. And I would even go so far as saying eliminate the planter as depicted on the plant on the top, because you're adding the ligustrum at the bottom. It's just better design.
You know, ultimately, they could obviously put movable planters or pots up there at any time they wanted to, so they could still get that effect if they choose. But
correct.
So the only thing I'm confused is, are these considerations, or did you want to make these conditions?
Well, it wasn't my motion, and so I can't really. So I was asked by the chair, and I made my opinion. I think a motion's on the table. If Board Minas seconds it, then there won't be part of it. If that motion doesn't move forward, or if Board Member Smith would like to add to that motion, we could add to the motion.
Okay.
So, Board Member Smith, would you like to add a friendly amendment to the motion?
I'm perfectly fine with it the way it is. If other people feel strongly about it, then they should add that friendly amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so there was a motion made, but I saw Mr. Minas's lips moving, but I didn't hear anything. So, Mr. Minas, do you want to second Board Member Smith's motion, or would you prefer to ask Mr. Simonian to make a different motion?
I second Ms. Smith's motion. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion made and seconded.
Okay, roll call, someone. Are we frozen? Shall I call?
I think she's on mute.
You're on mute, Julia.
So I have a motion made by Board Member Smith, second by Board Member Minas. In terms of roll call, Board Member Minas.
Aye.
Board Member Smith, Simonian.
Yes.
Board Member Smith.
Aye.
And Chair Welch.
Yes.
The motion passes 4-0. Next up, I would like to remind the public to please call in when the case is being presented. We had one caller that called in for the case during the board's deliberation while board member Minas was speaking. And unfortunately, it didn't come to our attention until later on. And so because it is during board's deliberation, it's actually too late to provide public testimony. So we just want to remind the members of the public, if you do wish to speak on an item, it's probably best to call in sooner and just to get in the queue so that we have you up and ready during the public comment period of the presentation. So thank you. With that said, we have one last case on tonight's agenda, which is for 820 Misty Isle Drive. And our staff person, Ms. Azadi, is here to make the presentation.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good evening and thank you. This is case number PDR 2110658 for the project site located at 820 Misty Isle Drive. The project site is an approximately 16,000 square foot irregularly shaped interior lot located in the R1R zone, FAR District 2. Originally developed in 1964, the site currently features a one-story, approximately 2,000 square foot single-family house with an attached two-car garage located at the front and there's a spa and a deck located at the rear of the property. The existing house is proposed for demolition as part of the proposal. The project site is accessed via an existing driveway off Misty Isle Drive, and that driveway will be maintained and expanded to accommodate the new garage. The Hillside lot has a gradual slope up from the street to the existing flat pad of the current house, and then it steeply slopes downward at the rear. There is one oak tree located at the rear of the project site. That oak tree will be maintained and protected in place during construction. The application was routed to the city's urban forestry department and they cited no concerns with the proposal. The applicant is proposing to construct a new one-story, 3,477 square foot single-family house with an attached two-car garage. The project also includes an expanded deck and pool area at the rear of the lot with a new pool room that is located at the lower level. Overall, the site planning is appropriate. The building footprint is sited on the lot in such a way as to address zoning regulations while also minimizing impacts to the existing oak tree at the rear. The new attached garage is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood pattern as well as the existing conditions of the site. The new retaining walls and the new planters at the front and along the side will be split face masonry block and will be screened appropriately with landscaping. New drought tolerant landscaping is proposed throughout the site that will complement the building design. The existing oak tree will remain as shown in the landscape plan. Decorative paving is proposed in the hardscape areas with permeable pavers at the driveway and walkways. For reference, this is an image of the proposed floor plan for the main house as well as the pool room. Overall, the mass and scale of the project is appropriate to the modern design concept and context of the surrounding neighborhood, which features 1- and 2-story homes. The house will remain 1 story, consistent with the existing conditions and the neighborhood. The overall height of the new house, as seen from the street, will be 14 feet 6 inches. The entire development, including the deck and pool room on the lower level, will be approximately 29 feet 11 inches. The flat roof design is consistent with the modern style of the house. The roof will have a gentle 2% slope to accommodate drainage, but this will not impact the design. And these are proposed sections of the project, showing the context of the neighboring properties, as well as sections showing the new deck and pool roof. In terms of design and detailing, the consistency in the use of materials and colors reinforces the modern design of the new house. The entryway is properly integrated into the design and features a covered, recessed single-door entry and is set back from the street. The new windows will be aluminum clad and a combination of fixed and casement windows. And at the rear, the design also features large sliding glass stacking doors. The proposed materials for the house include stucco in an off-white color, split lace, stone veneer, glass railings, and maple wood doors for the garage entry and access gate. The materials are high quality, reinforce the design concept, and the color palette is appropriate to the Hillside area. As it relates to public comments, I've received one phone call. It was from an adjacent property owner. He just had questions. He was concerned about dust and noise during construction, impacts to his views, as well as the plant material between the two properties. Staff is recommending approval of the project with one condition related to the oak tree. That concludes my presentation. I'm available if you have any questions.
Very good, thank you. Do any of the board members have any questions for Mrs. Zadi? Okay, seeing no hands raised, we can move on to the applicant's presentation.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Everyone, hello board members watching. I'd like to first say it's been a pleasure working with the owner of this property and working with the city planner. She's been very helpful throughout this process and helping to guide us and to get to where we are today. To begin, our site consists of a 16,000 square foot property, 16,029 square feet, mainly flat, with an area towards the end that is it was a one-story contemporary modern home, just under 3,500 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 5 bath, with standard common areas. There is a protected tree at the rear, which we are in fact going to maintain and we are going to protect, which was one of the first things we looked at when we were designing this project. We figured, how do we keep a safe distance away from it? So not have to worry about removing it. It just gives so much history to the property, so much shade. So it's a pleasant thing to keep it. Main drive for this project was to design a home where it's the neighborhood and architectural style, maintains appropriate mass, has articulation, and most importantly for all the neighbors is to maintain privacy and views, which I feel like we have tried our best to achieve. I don't really want to go into too much more detail, but I'll just pass it along if anyone has any questions or comments.
Okay, are there any questions from any of the board members? Yeah, board member Simonian.
Sure. I noticed that there's a great amount of detail put into the civil drawings with the wall heights, etc., which is something that we appreciate because so we don't get these kind of detailed civil drawings too often where they actually go and talk about the wall heights and the bottom of the wall heights and how the different retaining walls come together. And I was wondering if the gentleman that spoke, if he was a civil engineer as well on it, or if that has been kind of worked with or collaborated with another group.
No, just I'm not a civil engineer, but done a fair share of reviewing other civil engineers. So we kind of took a stab at it the best we could with the grading numbers, wall heights. I'm just part of the design.
You did a good job. You were able to really integrate that wall and think through how it gets integrated into the site, which I thought was nice.
Thank you.
The rest, I have no other questions at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Board Member Smith.
Thanks so much. I have a quick question regarding the use of maple wood as it's described. Is it natural maple? It's for the entry door and the garage door, sorry.
I believe so, yes. Yeah, it'll be weather treated maple.
Okay, I was concerned about its use exterior, long-term. I'm not sure what you mean by weather treated. I know that the garage door would be pretty heavy, but it would be great looking.
Yeah, yeah. We were gonna go with a different material, but we figured since it's north facing and it won't get any direct sun, then hopefully it'll give us some long years.
Okay, thanks very much.
Any other questions? Board Member Minas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I also had a quick question. Currently, there are retaining walls on the upslope side of the residence and on the downslope side of the residence. My question is, I wasn't sure whether, as part of this plan, you would be expanding the building pad on the side, beyond the side property lines, or especially on the upslope side, because your property goes up quite a distance to the top of the slope. I was just wondering if, as part of this project, you would be expanding the building pad on the upslope side. That would be towards the, let's see, towards the west, I guess.
West.
You would?
So the question was regarding the existing wall that's on the
There's an existing wall. I looked at the property. Existing wall on the upslope side of the building pad that supports the ascending slope going to the neighbor's house. Yes. And that wall has quite a bit of distance from the property, from the side property line. My question was, and I didn't see any in any one of the plans, whether you are planning to push that wall back to expand the building pad upslope.
Correct. So we are proposing to demolish the lower wall that's on the west side in order to expand the building frontage and gain some flat area there. But there's another existing wall at the very, very top. Might even be a block wall, but we're proposing to maintain that. So I assume there may be some shoring, but on very, very detailed civil plans. But the main purpose of that wall, yeah, is to be more.
So the question is, you would be expanding the building pad towards the upslope side. Okay, all right, thank you. It was not
okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, follow-up questions? Okay, very good. Are there any callers on the matter?
Yes, there is one caller at this time. Mickey Parsegian and Susan Meck. Mickey Parsegian and Susan Meck, you are live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing us to participate. Yeah, we had some questions, but in reality, we did speak to both the developer and to the next door neighbor about the retaining wall and our views. And he did give us assurances that neither that a block wall, retaining wall, nor our views won't be impacted by that retaining wall that they're building, and that they will cooperate with us to make sure that we keep our view there. So we're in favor of the project and would like to support our neighbors. No large trees are going to be blocking our view. We just wanted to make sure that was part of the process. And I think we got assurances that that would be the case. There would be more low-lying plants. So Is that what we're anticipating?
If that's a question for us, I believe that to be the case when the applicant has a moment to respond. So stay tuned. The applicant will reply to that in a few minutes. I don't want to speak on his behalf. But if that's it, are any other further comments from you, sir?
No, that was it.
Okay, very good. Stay tuned. Thank you. Any other callers?
Thank you. No, there are no other callers.
Okay, so would the applicant care to respond to that question that came in from the public?
Just to clarify, because I don't know why from my end he was kind of breaking the last part of the question, but it was mainly regarding the views, and I believe he is the neighbor on the west side, correct? The neighbor on the upsloping side from our property. So from that point, we're so down below from his pad that from his pad level, there's going to be no interruption. And all the vegetation that's being proposed there, they're really almost bush-like. Let's see, I believe we have blue agave on that side, which don't grow very tall. 4 feet at most. There is nothing really interrupting the except for the protected oak tree, which is going to stay.
Okay, very good. And I assume no other callers have come in. I want to give everybody a chance. Okay, so we'll be closing the public hearing, so no more callers from the public. So fair warning. Okay. All right, so we can go ahead and close the public hearing, and we will move to board member deliberations. Let's see, board member Minas, would you like to go first today?
Sure, I will. Thank you, Mr. For the opportunity. Basically, I see that as far as the massing is concerned, the mass of the new building and the existing building are almost similar. There's no huge alteration of the building mass. I see that comparing to the existing footprint, the proposed new building will be slightly more than 50% larger and flat roof. It's a low-key structure as far as I'm concerned. I had an opportunity to see the site and I also looked at the backyard of the property. On both sides of these properties, there's similar construction of infinity pool deck on the downslope side. Again, when you do construct on the downslope side of any property, you're enhancing the stability and, of course, overall slope condition. Again, technically, I didn't see any gross difference between what is proposed here and what exists in the general area of this property on the downslope side. I do like the staff recommendation to maintain the oak tree on the property. And overall, I have no further comments other than what the staff has recommended on this case.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Smith, would you like to go next?
Sure, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I absolutely applaud the proposed use of natural stone and natural wood. It's refreshing to see that we don't as often as I wish we did in the area. I see what the intention is of the designer, and the result is a very distinctive looking house. I will say I'm not entirely sold on its ability to fit into the neighborhood. most of the other homes in the neighborhood, other than one, have sloped or low sloped roofs. So this design, while very distinctive, isn't really as consistent as it could be. Hillside design guidelines have a lot of language about being consistent with the existing neighborhood that I'll get to. I see the vertical and horizontal tension that the designer is doing with the different forms, but it seems a wee bit unresolved at the front door. I'll bring this up later. Sorry, I'm going to move forward. The roof edges are really exaggerated thickness, which enhances the unique design, but it further separates it from the traditional design language of the established neighborhood, and which means it doesn't entirely fit into its setting. So the design guidelines have a lot of language about fitting into settings. In the Hillside design guidelines, it explains that new projects should fit well with surrounding building fabric. While it doesn't need to copy them, the mass and scale should respect existing building context. And this is a lot of wall forward sort of, and the thick looking roof planes. Under relate buildings to existing context, the design guidelines say under A3, relate new buildings to existing adjacent buildings through the use of proportion, transition, and other design features. And for instance, the relationship of solids to voids is very sort of avant-garde. I get it, but it's a lot different from the relation of solids to voids in the neighborhood. We skip ahead. In scale, proportion, and monumentality, under D, it says under 1 that the scale and proportion of the project should be designed to fit well within the surrounding context, even if its overall size is larger, which brings me a little bit to the entry. Also under D, number 2, it talks about emphasis of horizontal and vertical elements, size, scale, and placement of entries and doors, all contribute to the perceived mass and scale of the project. So I'm getting to that front door area where it says under scale and proportionality, scale, proportion, and monumentality, under D5, it says overscaled entries are discouraged. And while this entry isn't 2-story, it's pretty close. I see where it's going. I tried to appreciate that there was a transom rather than a super tall door. It's very, very tall, and its perceived height is increased by the very, very, very thin side lights on either side. I do think the roof form is consistent with the overall building design, not so much with the neighborhood, unfortunately. I'm not exactly certain how this house could be made to fit in better. I think that the relationship of solids to voids could assist with it, and that unresolved tension between the horizontality and verticality, there's something at the entrance that is lacking. There's the one big window that turns the corner in the living room, and then there's a very high sort of stone-clad column, and they don't entirely resolve the question. The color palette, while very pleasant, I'm concerned that the very light stucco doesn't really meet the guidance under F, where it says colors and materials in the hillside should blend with the hillsides and not provide a substantial contrast. It talks about highly reflective materials and colors. I know it's not a white, but it's pretty white, the stucco that's proposed. And I'm a little bit concerned about it just calling attention to itself and standing out in the neighborhood. So let me look at my notes again. The stucco isn't earth toned as proposed. So those are my basic overviews. overview of my comments. It's a reasonably successful design, but I think it would fit in better maybe in Malibu or some other place where there's a lot of land around it, not in a neighborhood of traditional houses. Hopefully this design, if my colleagues agree with me, might be tweaked just a little bit so that it fits in, or a medium bit so that it fits in better to the neighborhood, and therefore would comply with Chapter 3, implementing the Vision Hillside design guidelines for residential in the comprehensive design guidelines. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And Board Member Simoni.
Okay. As I indicated earlier, I thought the designer did a good job thinking through the orientation of the house onto the lot. I could tell that they've taken a good amount of time to try to figure out the slopes and to integrate the property onto the slope by minimizing disturbance, let's say, in a sense. It's a one-story building, which I appreciate. You know, we do have situations often where it's a two-story being proposed in these hillside steep streets where one home is overlooking the other, and anytime you have a two-story situation that's being proposed creates a lot of privacy issues for the surrounding homes on the downslope side, etc. So in this case, I very much appreciate the fact that we do have a one-story, and I appreciate the fact that they've taken the time to kind of integrate that into the site. And so site planning wise, I concur with the project. They are proposing a pool house in the back that's been integrated into the hillside, that's carved into the hillside, that's kind of adjacent to the pool underneath. And so that's a good use of the facilities associated with a pool. A lot of times we have a cabana that's being proposed that's on the ground level, in which case it kind of creates a structure, an accessory building at the rear of the property, kind of overlooking the properties on the other side. And that doesn't lend itself well to privacy issues. So in this case, this is tucked underneath, which I also think it's a positive. The use of materials, I think, are well designed. And overall, I don't particularly have an issue with the contemporary language. And I believe the contemporary language that they have incorporated into the design is thought out. It is proportional. It doesn't seem forced at all. It's not contrived. It really does flow quite nicely. And the aluminum windows and the sliding windows that they're proposing in the back, I think work well. So overall, I support the project, and I don't particularly have any extra conditions to add personally. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. For my notes, I likewise appreciate the fact that the applicant is keeping it to a single story. I think that is definitely in character with the predominant form factor in the neighborhood, so I appreciate that. In general, I like the modern design and the aesthetic. I like Board Member Smith. I appreciate the use of more natural materials to mitigate the more hard edges of a modern design. So I think that actually does work well to help it blend into the neighborhood. I also like the fact that some of the roof forms were varied. A flat roof is typical for a modern design, and I can appreciate that. It is in keeping with the design vernacular. But where it doesn't work as well for me is by limiting it to just the entry area. It just leaves it a bit wanting to me. There's not enough separation between the lower roof section and the taller roof section, where like you could put in some clear story windows or something like that. So it reads to me more as height for height's sake. And it really serves mainly to present the entryway with a sense of monumentality. So to me, I think a more successful application of varying roof designs, roof heights, would have been to raise it in the living room areas, the kitchen area and the living room areas. I think that would have been more successful in stepping it with the topography. I mean, admittedly, this is on a flat pad, but still, the overlying neighborhood does slope up. And so if you were seeking to raise the roof, I would think that would be the more appropriate place to do it, especially if you could have enough differential that you could put some clear story windows to bring some natural light into that interior. Let's face it, this is a large house being on a one-story form, and so those inner spaces in there are going to be fairly removed from the exterior glass, especially because the kitchen and the dining room are facing that west side, which is facing a hillside. So not a lot of light will be coming in through there. So you had a lot of light coming in from the south-facing side, which would create a lot of glare. So I think a higher roof with some clear story windows would have been a more appropriate use of trying to add some height and not create this monumentality to the entryway. But, I mean, this is potentially a matter of opinion on my side. I just think that it would have been a better use of trying to vary up the roof forms. But generally speaking, again, if there's some discussion we can have about that, if anyone feels as I do, fine, we can discuss it. If not, I'm not necessarily going to not support the project as a result of that. So those are my comments. Does anyone have anything that they would like to follow up with or respond to any of my comments or others? Board Member Smith.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. I absolutely agree that if that left side on the elevations were somehow higher and integrated into the design, perhaps not as high as the proposed entry is currently shown, where there would be a little bit more interplay on the elevation that faces the street. And I agree that clear story windows would be in keeping with the design style, as well as provided much needed light into that large residential interior. So I am in favor of that.
Board Member Simonia.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Board Member Smith was referring onto the left side, but I thought you were referring more onto the right side.
Yeah, the uphill side was what I was referring to, yes, where the living room and the kitchen area were.
Yeah, I think in general, I concur with you in that if the intent is to get more light into the living, dining, kitchen area, it certainly would make sense to differentiate the roof over the kitchen and dining and living area by popping that portion up and putting a clear story. We've certainly discussed that in the past, and that could make sense. I think for a house like this, a modern home like this, where you have a 10-foot clear in the back, for a size this big, it would not hurt if it was 12 feet, right? Proportionally, that would feel better. And I'm not sure if the applicant has done this because they were maybe pushed into it by staff suggestions to lower height. Not sure. But if we are considering that, where we're de-emphasizing the entryway, but increasing the right side over the living and kitchen and integration of some sort of clear story above, I would support. I would probably not support raising the left side just for variety's sake, because those are, the bedrooms, etc. It's actually the bathroom. Well, it's not as conducive as the right side. I think the right side is more of the great room, and that proportionality would work better.
Yeah, and that would follow the slope as well, I think. So I think that would be one of the guidelines recommendations.
That's the idea, is to put the height on the upslope side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, Board Member Smith.
Thank you. So sorry. I double checked the plans, and what I had meant by the left side was where the very small scale living room is shown at the front of the house. I see what you're saying, and both of you, and it does make sense.
Okay.
However, I am still very concerned about the 14 plus foot entry, but that's it.
Board Member Simonian or Minas, any thoughts, reactions? Just go ahead, Board Member Minas.
Basically, yeah, I agree with the chair about following the street topography, which goes from east to west, upslope.
Mm-hmm.
And from the west side, I mean, that area being next to the slope, as you mentioned, the amount of the lighting coming into the building probably will be kind of minimal. So I'm having difficulty kind of visualizing how would raising the roof on the right side towards the upslope would contribute or attribute to more lighting, unless some new windows are introduced, as Board Member Smith suggested, I think. So, and that will cause the building height to actually go up. I'm kind of a little bit puzzled, but again, the building being just one story and not intrusive by any means, I feel kind of uncomfortable, kind of altering the mass of the building on either side of the structure. That was my comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I would just react that that's the goal of at least in my thinking of it was that the clear story windows would be facing either north or east, so that they'd bring light from a different direction than from the west. But again, you make a good point, Minas, that the design generally is okay. I was just a little bit concerned about the height just being in that entryway, that it creates a sense of monumentality. Whereas if it was skewed a little bit more towards that right-hand side, I think it would, serve better in terms of the quality of the light inside the home, as well as be more in keeping with the design guidelines. But I don't know that I necessarily want to force it as a condition. Perhaps it could be a consideration, but again, I'm not the one who makes the motions here, so I will leave it to my fellow board members to take an action here.
If staff can ask for a little clarification on,
certainly,
if you do choose to raise the mass at the right side, in part to reduce the sense of monumentality at the entrance, I'm having a little trouble visualizing how that would work. I'm presuming you don't want the garage height to go up any higher.
No.
And then if we lowered the height of the entry area to kind of be even with the fascia of the garage roof height and the fascia to the left, then we're losing the sense of shifting planes that the board seems to appreciate. What one thought would be, if there is going to be a taller portion at the rear that will be somewhat visible from the street, I imagine, but not crazy visible, would you entertain the idea of perhaps like a monitor that came toward the front entry area to give them a sense of height within that space, but it wouldn't come forward to the street? That could bring light down into the entry foyer without doing the monumentality. So we would keep kind of a horizontal line, but there would be a little bump to give the roof line a little interest.
Board Member Smith, and followed by Board Member Simonian.
I was looking at the plan, so it was hard to get to the unmute button. I would entertain that suggestion, and I don't mean that the entry has to be the exact same height as the rest of the house. I just don't think that it needs to be 14 feet and change. It could just step up a little bit rather than its current large difference in height. And I do like the idea of a monitor level with clerestory that could light the spine of the house. And I think it's better in keeping with the design guidelines intent.
Board Member Simoni? You're on mute still. Still not hearing you. Board Member Simoni, we can't hear you. No. Okay, now I think you are unmuted. No, still muted.
Perhaps your inner Marcel Marceau can describe your.
Cannot hear you. No.
I think you had unmuted it and then muted it again.
Okay, talk right now.
Yeah.
Do you hear me now?
Now we can hear you, yes.
I think I was muted by the system because a window popped up saying for me to request to be unmuted. So not quite sure what that was. So I apologize because I did have this unmuted during that dialogue. So I'm not quite sure what the issue was. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I indicated during board deliberation, I don't particularly have an issue with the design. I think the entry height is okay. We have a 12-foot building height with a 2'6" addition on the entry for a 1-story new home addition. I don't think that's proportionally big. I also don't think that's any kind of a mansion, obviously. So I don't particularly have any issues. I think the reason we entertained the dialogue, which you brought up, was could this project better itself with additional light being carried into the living areas? And the answer is perhaps yes. And then if we were doing that, we would, I think, pop up, keep the entry where it is, and increase or pop up the roof over the dining living area and have some clerestories on the north side, perhaps, to bring light in. But I'm perfectly happy supporting this project as is, and I would not support lowering the entry because I think there's no need for it. So those are my thoughts. And I couldn't move to make a motion with keeping staff's suggestions and possibly raising just a portion of the roof over the family and living areas with a clerestory integrated on to the north side, which would be stepped back, from the street facade. It would add further articulation to the facade if that's what you desire. But I would support that, but it's not something that is that strong from my point of view. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So perhaps it could be a consideration rather than a condition for consideration of a motion.
With that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to approve the project with staff's condition with an additional consideration for applicant to increase the height area magnitude of say 30 inches above the family and living area with a 2-foot clerestory integrated onto the north if they so choose. That would be my motion.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, there's been motion made and seconded. Can we please have a roll call?
Sure. Board Member Minas,
Yes.
Board Member Simonian,
Yes.
Board Member Smith,
Nay.
okay, and Chair Welch.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that is the last case for tonight. So would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.